There we go. Okay. So welcome to the 2020 Fall Continuity Resilience Today conference. As you know, with COVID-19, things got moved around a little bit. And unfortunately, things got moved to the fall. But that was also a conscious choice as well, to move things closer with DEMCOM, who are actually well, I can't actually say across the hall. They're in having their conference going on with their guests right now as well, and speakers. So it's we've got both of these conferences going on at the same time, CRT and DEMCOM, which is great. Lots of people attending, I hope, from hopefully around the globe, not just here in Canada, considering people do consider this a Canadian conference. If you don't know who I am Alex Fullick. You can see my name there. And I have a podcast or internet talk radio show on Voice America Network, the Variety channel. And it's called Preparing for the Unexpected, of which you can see behind me here. And we've been doing, or I've been doing it now for almost 3.5 years. We have over 100 and almost 200 shows now. With different guests. I speak to everybody that I can in the business continuity, resiliency, communications, disaster management, and even our folks over in emergency management and on the DEMCOM conference. I noticed there's a couple of speakers over there who've been guests on my show. So, rather interesting, I think. So I talk about anything that's relatable to business continuity management. And I don't just look at the usual, how do you do BIAs and risk assessment and things like that. I also look at how people think during disasters, the psychology behind it, and get some real tips for people on how they can actually do certain things, increase their knowledge, increase their skills, increase anything that they can, anything that helps them do what they do. And we've had people from psychologists, academic researchers, professors, best-selling authors have come on and given their opinion on things. And it's really interesting to know that everybody has different opinions and thoughts and ways to do things. And I think that's great. I really do. I know traditionalists might think that, there are only certain guidelines we should follow or certain standards we should follow. But then in the same breath, we say we're all individuals and we all should think for ourselves. So they kind of contradict themselves. But with talking to all these different people, you find that with their different way of thinking, they have and can have different experiences. They can think about different things. They can experience different things. They can go through different experiences and perform things differently based on their corporate culture, some of their previous history that they've gone through, disasters they've gone through. And I'd like to welcome Alex to the room here. Alex, I think you're on mute. Can I unmute you here? Can I hear you, Alex? Oh, no, he's gone.
Oh, I think he dropped.
Oh, we lost him. Well, he'll come back, I'm sure. No, what was I saying? So, I found that talking with people, even if they're talking about the same subject, like a BIA, and I'm sure you're familiar, many of you will be familiar with the adaptive BC movement that called for the abolition, so to speak, of the BIA. And then you get proponents of, the standards, ISO and BSI and DRI. It must be done this way. I tend to think they're both valid. Depending on your corporate culture and what you're trying to achieve, you may need to do things. Ultimately, what you want to do is have a business continuity program, a disaster response program, whether it be evacuations, crisis management, communications, and disaster strategies, all the other different pieces of a program and testing exercises. We all ultimately have the same goal, but that doesn't mean we all take the same road to get there. If we all want to drive to San Diego, where I live, may choose a different route than somebody who lives in, Calgary, or someone who lives in Chicago. We may drive different ways. That doesn't mean that we're wrong because we take different roads, and different paths and execute things differently. Ultimately, our goal is the same and we all get to the same place. So I tend to talk with different people and learn from their experiences. And, especially the researchers, it's really interesting to find out some of the things they've been working on. I remember speaking with one individual who was talking about predicting earthquakes. And they now have some equipment that's allowing them to predict some earthquakes. They've got a passing grade in it, and it gives them a few extra minutes notice than what they ever had before. So his research was really interesting, and I really hope he keeps that up. I wish I could remember the professor's name, but he spoke at a different conference in Manila where I was speaking as well. So it was rather interesting listening to him and other people, and things like resilience, how people talk about making the organizations resilient. And I've made it no secret on my show that it irks me when people say, if you buy my product or my service, I can make you resilient. Well, no, you can't. What you're actually doing is what it comes down to when you start digging into some of this is you're doing a fancy word for IT disaster recovery. That all your systems come up and when you want them, your email is there when you need it, those kind of things. That's not resiliency. Resiliency, it may be resilient from the technology standpoint, but it's not resilient from an organizational perspective. You need to have leaders that really do have open doors, have really strong lessons learned protocols. That's a big thing with me. I with lessons learned and resiliency. If I want to become resilient, I've got to learn some of the things that I've done in the past and learn from it. And the only way you learn a lesson is something has to change. If nothing changes, you have not learned anything. Think about that. So many times we see on TV, we're hearing it now. Did we learn any lessons from this? Oh yeah, this, that, and the other thing. But nothing changes. If nothing changes, a process, a system, a function, a way of communicating. If nothing changes, you didn't learn anything. As Ken Simpson of Resilience Ninja says, that's just a lesson observed. A lesson learned without action is just a lesson observed. And I agree with that. As many of you might know, I work also in project management and program management as well, which I specifically did so that to learn the ins and outs of how to make my business continuity management practice stronger. Stakeholder management, change management, et cetera, et cetera. And with lessons learned, I found with projects, we waited to the very end. After implementation, after things have closed down, after resources have already been assigned to other projects or have left the company if they were, contract workers and they're done. And then we ask those who are left, who may not have been around at the very beginning, what did we learn? And usually we give ourselves a pat on the back and, that's great, but we don't actually really capture lessons learned. What went wrong and what did we do to change it along the way? And lessons learned, if they're really going to be learned, you have to do it along the way. You can't wait to the very end. If you're taking a trip, like I said, going to San Diego, if you're driving to San Diego, you're looking at the sights along the way, and you're remembering what you see. You don't get to San Diego and say, okay, what did I see? What did we pass? No, that's not what you do. And that won't make you resilient. You've got to learn and get through all of that stuff. And when I spoke with best-selling authors Jennifer Eggers and Cynthia Barlow, of bouncing forward. On their book on resiliency, resilience is not about bouncing back. You don't want to be in the same place you were when you had an incident. You want to be better positioned. You want to have made changes. You want to have learned something, and you want to be able to move forward from there. That's, moving forward and learning how to get over that the adverse situation that you encountered with new ways of thinking, or better ways of thinking, and better ways of doing things. Like I said, make a change. That's how you become resilient. Buying somebody's product off a shelf is not resilient, and I hope I don't upset anybody out there by saying that, because resiliency is also a mindset. It's not just technology capabilities. It's a mindset. No product off a shelf, no pens I buy, no stickies with notes is going to make me resilient. And nobody giving me that pen or stickies is going to make me resilient. I have to get through these things, with my support systems. In organizations, you have a lessons learned, and you invite 50 people, and maybe 5 show up. Okay, now we're done. We learned a lot. No, you didn't learn anything, actually. You just usually, and I'm sure many of you will agree to this, have been through this, will turn around and find out that what you were really doing was just pointing the finger. IT should have done this, and Bob should have done that, Sally should have done this, if it's even remembered at all. And that's really not a lessons learned. That's just a gripe session, a finger pointing exercise. And I don't agree with those. And I've actually got up and walked out of a lessons learned meeting. That's what it was called. When that was occurring, I just said, this isn't a lessons learned meeting at all. I said, this is just trying to point fingers of blame. I said, and I'm not going to be a part of it. And I got up and walked out. And apparently it made a big impact on the people left in the room. And I don't recall ever attending a lessons learned meeting since then, but oh well, at least with this one client anyway, they needed to change how they manage that section. So, as I said, talking with all these different people in resilience, it was interesting, the different viewpoints. And it doesn't mean anyone's wrong. I want to point that out. Just because your experiences are different than mine doesn't mean I'm right, you're wrong, or you're right, I'm wrong. It's we all experience something different. We all have different ways of doing things based on where we come from, our organizational culture, our industries, the situation we may have responded to. Right now we're all responding to COVID, and some organizations, sadly, have to deal with other situations that are occurring. They could have fires and floods. We're seeing floods that were down in Houston a while ago with I forgot the hurricane's name, but the hurricane that came down a couple of weeks ago. So those businesses, not only are they dealing with COVID, but they're also dealing with floods. And California, look at the wildfires out there right now. Those businesses, communities, and individuals, they're dealing with COVID, of which we all are. Let's face it, we're all dealing with COVID, whether you like it or not, whether you agree with it or not. COVID is there. But that doesn't stop other things from occurring. So that's one of the big things when I was speaking with Regina Phelps and James Green, who is presenting at CRT as well. And I think it's tomorrow, but he should be stopping by at some point. And, they both said, we now have to start thinking beyond our normal scope. When it comes to our resilience and our response and our plans, at every turn these days, we've got COVID, and that's going to be going for a few more months yet. And by few, I mean a lot. Earthquakes aren't going to stop. Hurricanes won't stop. Tornadoes aren't going to stop. Wildfires, they're not going to stop. Hopefully they do, but the next season will come along again. and like they did last year, they had strong wildfires a year ago, and then they started earlier this year. So things come back. They always do. History, like this, the old expression, history always repeats itself. So it'll come back. And now organizations and communities have to start thinking. We could always be in a two disaster situation, not a single disaster situation, a two disaster situation, and could be even worse. Think of some of those buildings where the bad rioters, there was COVID, there was fires, and civil unrest. So there was three things going on. That's not easy for anybody.
If you liked that video, thumbs up. If you didn't like that video, thumbs down. But leave me a message and let me know your thoughts. Of course, don't forget to subscribe. And in the meantime, stay prepared, everybody.